Today we will be looking at bankruptcy filing trends by chapter in the state of Tennessee. To do this, we have about a dozen charts showing bankruptcy activity in the state going back to 1990. All of this data on filings comes from the Administrative Office of the United States Courts. The first chart shows total filings by year in the state from 1990 to 2015. In the early 1990s, say to 90 to say 95, there were about 40,000 cases filed per year. This had risen to around 50,000 by the late 1990s, and by say from 2001 to 2004, filings were actually over 60,000 per year in the state. There was a slight spike in filings in 2005, the year of bankruptcy reform, although this was much less of a spike than most other states saw. A fairly large drop-off the next year, followed by 3 annual increases as the recession came along, and then filings have dropped in Tennessee from 2009 through 2015. They've dropped about 1/3 over that time, and right now are about the same levels they were, say, back in 1994, 1995. Looking at filings relative to population, Tennessee has always had a very high bankruptcy rate, and since 1990 there have been about 1.25 million cases filed in the state that only has 6.5 million people. Tennessee has had the highest rate in the country. They're 95% above the national average. And it's been fairly consistent. 22 of the 26 years, they have had the highest rate of any state in the country. And generally right about double the national average. And so even though filings are going down in Tennessee, they've gone down everywhere else too. And it's still much higher than in most other places. Looking at Chapter 7 cases in the state, in early 1990s, around 15,000 per year. Late 90s rose to about 20,000, about 30,000 by the years prior to bankruptcy reform, a spike in 2005, huge drop-off in 2006, then up through the recession, and then 6 years of declines. And so right now they're back about where they were, say, in 1993. Chapter 11 in the state had a big drop-off in the 1990s, and most states had that. And part of this was the Chapter 13 debt limits were changed in 1994, and that might have something to do with it. Overall, filings have run about 200 a year since the mid-1990s, but they've been higher during before and after the two recessions we've had in 2001 and 2008, 9, 10. It looks like for 2016, Chapter 11 filings in Tennessee are on pace to be about 150 this year. Chapter 13 cases in Tennessee, you can see this is a much smoother pattern than the other charts. You don't have the big ups and downs. And they've been fairly steady around 25,000 per year over the years, down a little bit since 2009, but not as much as in other places, and still quite high. Now, looking at Chapter 13s as a percent of total filings, the red line here is the national line, and it's been hugging around 30% since 1990, with some disruption around bankruptcy reform. In Tennessee, they were in the above 60% for a while, dropped down to around 50%, and are headed back up to right around 60% now. In 2000, but there are differences throughout the state. In the Eastern District of Tennessee, it's last year, 2015, about 46% of the cases were Chapter 13s. In the Middle District, it was 48, and in the Western District, 76% of the cases are Chapter 13s. Looking at the unemployment rate in Tennessee compared to the national average is kind of a proxy of how the economy has gone. And the blue line is Tennessee. You can see that they have followed the national average tended to be a little bit higher than the national average from, say, 2007 to 2009, and since 2009 have been at or sometimes even below the national average. And right now, the rate is only about 4% in the state, so it's fairly good shape. Filings peaked nationwide in September of 2010, and since then they've gone down by nearly half nationwide. In Tennessee, the rate has been much lower. Filings are only down about 29% since 2010. And that's fifth lowest in the country. But geographically, the Southeast, and particularly the high Chapter 13 states, have had smaller than average declines, where the Southwest and parts of New England have had the biggest declines since 2010. Statewide, the declines have been in the Eastern District 37%, Middle 33%, and the Western only 20%. So that's one of the smallest declines in the country in the Memphis area. Looking quarter by quarter, you can see that the national, for a number of years, the declines were running 10 to 15% almost every quarter, and that's somewhat decreasing now. In Tennessee, they were more in the 5 to 10% range each quarter during this range. Right now, we have kind of an unclear pattern where we had a couple of very modest increases and a decline in the second quarter. And it looks like there's probably about a 5% decline in the third quarter, too, once we get the final numbers. In the first 6 months of the year, the overall decline was only 1% in Tennessee. A number of adjoining states actually have had increases, very small increases in that time. And the national filings went down about 6% in the first half of the year. So as far as the outlook for filings in the state, it looks like there'll be about 35,000 cases filed in Tennessee this year, probably slight increases in the coming years. I don't see any return to the 60,000 per year caseload that Tennessee saw, say, from 2001 to 2004. But Tennessee likely will have the highest bankruptcy rate relative to the population nearly every year going forward. And the only thing that could really push up filings back to prior levels, I think, would be another severe recession or some major change to the bankruptcy laws. Well, that concludes this look at bankruptcy filings in Tennessee. For more statistical information and other information on bankruptcy, be sure to visit the newsroom section of the ABI website at www.abi.org.